There are some specific functions that are very important to learn within this course. Within the PMT count tab, you'll notice in cell A1, I've provided you with the payment function. We covered this previously, but again, your first parameter is the interest rate, which in this case I've identified as 6. The second parameter is your number of payments, which in this case we define as 15 payments, and your present value, which here we've identified as $1,500. Another important aspect is if functions. Here we have two specific if functions. You'll notice we're trying to determine whether or not cell B2, which features Ross Perot, is true or false. If it is true, it will return a true response. If it is false, it will return a false response. So B2, the cell B2, features Ross Perot. So therefore, it is true, and our if function works. Next, we want to determine if cell B3 features Bob Dole. Again, true or false are the possible results. And you'll notice Bill Nye the Science Guy is in with cell B3. So our result is false, meaning our if function worked correctly. You'll notice in column F, there are random numbers here. I used the formula rand between 1, 100. You will not specifically be tested on this specific function. However, this specific function gives you a random number between whichever two parameters you choose. In this case, I chose the number 1 and the number 100. So you will notice down below in this column, we're trying to determine a count. A count determines how many cells are filled with information. We utilize our count function and we select our range, F1 through F25, and we get our 25 as a result, as every cell is filled with a number. We went through some previously. That adds all of our numbers together. We covered average previously, which provides us an average of all the numbers totaled together divided by the number there is. Our min function gives us our lowest number within that specific range, and our max function, of course, gives us the maximum number within that range. So here, the min could be 1 if there was a 1, because that is the lowest possible random number we chose, and the max could be 100 because that is the maximum random number we chose. You'll next turn over to the concat tab. You will notice here in cell C3 the left function, and you will notice that the parameter is B1. So we want to take the letter or feature that is the farmost left within cell B1. Within B1 we have happy birthday. The most far left is H. It takes that out and puts that in this cell here. With the right function, we use cell C1. It takes the last item all the way to the right, which in this case is the W, which ends now. Next, we use the mid function. You'll notice there's 3 parameters here. We take our first parameter, which is the cell with a string or statement within it. We then have 1. We then have 5. With the mid function, the second parameter tells us where to start. So we start from the first letter, the H. We take 5 letters out of that specific cell, which gives us hello. So again, the first reference is to the cell. The second reference is to where we start. The last reference is how many letters we're taking out. You'll notice now in cell C10, we change the left function a little. We choose cell A1, and now we use a second parameter where we take 3 letters, similar to how we use the mid function. Next, in cell C11, we use the right function differently. We choose cell C1. We choose 7 letters. We start from the W and work ourselves backwards, which also ends up including a space. We now change the mid function to use cell D1, start from the beginning, and we reference everything inside that specific cell with the 14 letters. We now use concat, which combines everything. So we now combine Bob, space, is now, space, 90 years old, into one specific sentence. We could also concatenate something by adding things together using an ampersand. So in this case, we combine hello, how are you, with what we created using the concat function. If you now click over to the and/or tab, you'll notice we are using the and function. We've used this a little bit previously, but an and function checks on one specific thing. In this case, in cell E2, we're trying to determine whether B2 is greater than or equal to 6. We've pulled this down through that specific column, and you will notice that we only receive true results for any of the items within column B that are greater than 6. You will notice the same thing within column H. We are checking to see whether or not column G is equal to 9. The only instance where this is true is in G10, where there is a 9. We do the same thing in column I for less than 3, and the same thing in column J for greater than 8. In column K, we check for an OR. This checks for 2 or possibly more specific aspects. So in this case, we're checking to see if G2 is greater than 1 or less than 6. 1 is not greater than 1, but it is less than 6. So you notice in all of these cases, we receive a true result because they are either greater than 1 or less than 6. So 1 through 5, they are all less than 6. 2 through 10, they're all greater than 1. We did the same thing in column L, but this case we checked for G2 greater than 11 and less than 3, or less than 3. Next is VLOOKUP, in this case, a nearest match. We have this specific table here. We want to find specific information, so we use the VLOOKUP formula. Our first parameter is what we want to look up. In this case, we're going to look up the quantity 23. We then select our table range, which in this case is A6 through C10. We then have a third parameter of 2 because we need to check for quantity. But we want to check for a price. So we need these 2 features of the table: our quantity to check for and our price to return. And our last parameter of 1 signifies that we're looking for an approximate match. So you will notice 23, there is no specific quantity of 23. So it gives us the closest match. So it will go for a quantity of 10 because that is the closest to 23. And it gives us a unit price of 18. You'll notice I've similarly done the same in searching for the numbers 5, 15, 59, 89, 145, and 160. Now we look at VLOOK with an exact match. So these parameters change a little bit. So here we're looking for B20, car loan. You notice here the car loan is an A8. So that is an exact match we're looking for. Our second parameter is our table, A6 through E10, with all the information we need. We have to look at all 5 columns because we want the information from the payment column to be our result. And then our last column, our last parameter, is a 0, which reflects our exact match. And you will notice again, I've done the same thing for the result of credit card, student loan, mortgage, and personal loan. And you will notice all of the responses reflect the corresponding explanation within the payment column.